It's not every day that I get to build a computer, which is a shame because I really like building computers. But I'm going to get to build a computer today, which is great. Just to start out, though, none of this is necessary. I understand that, but I like things, and this is something that I like to do. Let's tell a little story. I built a computer about 4 years ago, back right after the move in 2020, where we left Georgia and moved all the way to Wyoming. And I was getting into doing video stuff, especially recording wildlife in 4K 60 frames per second, which is my preferred format. I had a laptop at the time that we've shown in a previous video that could not handle editing 4K 60 footage. Not at all. It basically timed out again and again when I tried to produce the first couple videos that I did when I tried to render them. It just really couldn't handle it. And I took them all the way down in quality to the point where it was very choppy, and I knew I needed something more so that I could actually edit the footage. So I saved up my money and I built a computer. And I've been using that editing computer with a couple part changes for the last 4 years. Now, maybe about a year ago, I don't remember exactly when, I had a problem where it wouldn't turn on. And I diagnosed and I tried things and that and everything. And then I realized that there was a light on the motherboard telling me that I had an issue with my RAM. So I pull all the RAM out and I start putting in stick after stick and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And eventually I figure out that 2 of my sticks of RAM are dead. I had 128 gigs in it to begin with. We were down to 64, which is perfectly fine. It's still edited. It's not, I noticed a bit of chugging here or there, but it wasn't, you don't need that much necessarily unless you are doing, again, high-end video editing, essentially. But we've been dealing with it ever since, and it's been okay. And you're asking, well, now RAM is under warranty. It typically has a lifetime warranty. How come you didn't send it back? Well, I forgot about it for one thing. It's been, I don't know, a year. Did it happen in 2024? I don't really remember. It was long enough ago that I don't fully remember. But finally, after all this time, we got a printer last month. And it reminded me, oh yeah, I could probably send that off. And I could get my RAM back and I could get fixed RAM because up to that point, I assumed the issue was with the RAM. Bearing the lead a little bit there and also just straight up telling you. Anyway, I also had a problem with a power supply that I needed to return. It's the second time I've had to RMA, is what they call it, a EVGA power supply, so I won't be buying EVGA power supplies anymore. It's not the same one, which is my whole there. I could get into a whole thing about how warranty, where you have to pay the cost to send it to them, which I get. I understand why they don't pay that cost, but it's more expensive on you. And then once you get the thing and then it comes back, you're not getting a brand new one, so the warranty won't be. And like the whole it. Anyway, I did both of those things now that we had a printer. And then I got the RAM back, and I went and popped it into the editing computer, and same thing. It was popping up with errors. Well, that's not ideal. Back to diagnosing, back to troubleshooting. Now I know it can't be the RAM because then I did what I probably should have done in the first place. And I don't know if I did and just didn't realize or forgot, but I took the 2 new RAM sticks and I put them in on the other 2, basically slots 3 and 4, and the computer booted up. There's an issue with 1 and 2. Now, I started looking into that very specifically and found different things as to what it could be. Apparently, it could be a problem with the CPU, because that, if it's a bent pin or if it's just dusty, they basically say pull the CPU off entirely, clean everything, put it back on, reseat it. It's very common that that's the case. Well, that wasn't the case with me. I did all of that top to bottom, cleaned it up and down, made sure everything, no bent pins, it's all good. Still have 2 dead RAM slots. That was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I did that. And I went, okay, well, it's still fine. We can still edit. But it could be just that part of it has died. The motherboard has had a failure. I did not actually look to see whether or not that was still in warranty. But again, my whole issue is that now I have to pay to mail the thing off, and I could have zero. Like if I do that, and I could do that now, I haven't decided. But if I did that, I have no way to edit. And I am on a schedule of editing almost every weekend, but every other weekend, depending on what I'm doing, like video game stuff, recording that. And I don't want any downtime there, which again, not necessary. totally reasonable to just take a break from that, but I don't want to. So this could be the sign of the computer starting to die after 4 years, and components are going to go. And at some point, I'll just be left with a broken computer that I cannot fix, and I will have to buy more parts for. Or it could just be fine, and I just have 2 dead RAM slots. But what also has happened is I have some contract work coming in. Last time I built a computer, and I actually did some of it on camera and talked about it, it was back beginning of 2023. I built one. I like building computers. I built one for the living room, so I could play games, or more commonly, it's like using it for, chats and games and watching videos while I'm out there. It's a secondary screen. Anyway, I made that one look cool. There's a video about that. But when I did that, I also put into that budget an upgrade for the editing computer, where I went from using some older GPU to a much nicer, better. I got a 3090, which has lots of RAM and has been smooth sailing ever since. And that's definitely going to stay the case. I guess we should probably wrap it up. Is there anything? It could be the end at downtime. I'm looking at my notes. Let's see. Okay. Yes. That computer, the editing computer as it currently is going to become my gaming computer entirely, because currently I've been using it. I was playing Helldivers 2 was the last game I played. And it's been fine. It works great. It's going to continue to do the gaming part of it, and then I'm just going to split off the editing entirely. I'm going to get to build a new computer today. I had some contract work. That's what I was talking about. That's where I got sidetracked there. That's what I did back in 2023. That's where the money comes from for all this stuff. It comes from the fact that I go out of my way to work on weekends and get paid for it to do photo and video work. And I use that money to then put back into usually photo and video work, or buy a new camera, or, something along those lines. Has been the process for a few years, so I don't go further into debt. So I started looking up, all right, what am I going to do? And for the last few years, when I've been building a computer for editing, there's a website called Puget Systems. They're fantastic. They test all kinds of situations on specific software to find out exactly what hardware works the best with that software. Because it's not just, oh, you can get this and this CPU is going to be really fast and it's going to work fast for everything. It could, but there actually is ways to fine tune, and it could, but there are actually ways to kind of edit and fine tune and do the program specifically with better hardware for it. So they're basically a great resource for that. And that's what I look up and go. And I remember when I did it before and I was looking at the 3090, I was like, okay, it's like middle of the road. It wasn't like the top tier or anything like that, but I do remember it being listed. It's not even listed anymore because the 40 series is out, but the 4090 is like $2,000. Yeah, that was the entire budget on what we spent today. Not today, but close enough. So we are moving from, I don't have the computer in front of me. Maybe I'll put up footage of it here or something, but what it currently is at. After building it in 2020, I have an AMD Ryzen 3900X 12-core CPU. That's great. It's been doing well, chugging along. It's going to be great for gaming after this. Obviously, I had 128 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz RAM. Down to 64. Nothing I can do about that. I would have to get a whole new motherboard. When I first built it, the only graphics card I could really afford at that point in 2020, considering I was building a whole system from scratch, was a 2060. After a time, I had to build another computer for work, my actual job, the oldest one that I was using because it's mostly just web-based work that I do, died, and I needed to build something up rather quick. I wound up getting a 1650 Super. Then I went, I don't need this for work. I just needed a graphics card in it, and it wasn't super expensive. And I wound up putting that in the editing computer and then taking it out later on when I realized it wasn't adding as much. It did help a little bit to have that, but it works better if you have 2 matched cards anyway. Now it's got a 3090 in it, which is great. But it's going to have something different because I'm taking that 3090. That 3090 is for video editing. And in its place, because it was cheaper and I wanted to try it, I bought an AMD. It's got an AMD CPU. I hear that it should be fine. I'm not trying to do 4K on it. I do have a nice monitor, which I didn't bring in here. I'm pretty well restricted on space, but I brought this in here because this is the RX 6700 XT, We're gonna try a Radeon card. It should be fine. I've got a 1440p monitor that's much higher refresh rate than anything I've ever done before, and that's going to go in the gaming computer. It's about the only thing that is going in the gaming computer, and what's coming out is like my SSD, some things of that nature. Two SSDs. One is an NVMe, and the other one is the big 4 terabyte one I use as a cache drive. The graphics card is obviously coming out, and then that one is going in. So now we have a 3090 to go into the new computer, which for the CPU, and the reason I brought up Puget, I looked at the Puget system's current standards as of currently, their latest publications. This is the end of August 2024 is when I'm recording and building this. And the top 3 slots when I'm looking for DaVinci Resolve, which is the editing software that I use, are AMD Threadrippers, and those are really, really expensive. Like, I think the cheapest and the number 3 slot of the performance was like $3,000, I want to say. Far more than I spent on the entire budget just for one. Not going to happen. I could try to get one used, but again, still not going to happen. Instead, it was around $550 that I went with Intel this time for an Intel i9 14900K, a 24-core processor. There's a lot of other things to it. This is just kind of surface level, but it's double the cores. It should be nice and fast. And then I started getting into, once I decided, all right, if I'm going to spend money on this in any way, I could get a new motherboard for the editing computer, where it currently is at, and replace the one that's there. But I'd like faster RAM. I'd like a better processor. If I'm going to spend any money on it at all, let's get one that will hopefully last at least another 4 years, probably longer. I really hope longer, and top it out at the best that we really can afford right now. So there's the processor for it. I was looking at a bunch of different motherboards, and that was really where it came down to try to keep it right at $2,000, because I priced it out with other stuff and it was $2,500 or something along those lines with everything. So I pared it down, tried to keep it reasonable. I was looking at another one originally. I think it was a gigabyte motherboard that was EATX, which is the size format, and it was going to be huge. And I like a bigger one, but I wasn't able to get that. Instead, we have an MSI motherboard, B760M. I just went with something that would work and would fit it, and most importantly, didn't need a BIOS update, because although I have several other types of chips for the other stuff I've been doing, all the computers I've built basically are interchangeable in certain ways because they all use AMD CPUs that use the same socket. This is totally different. And a lot of the motherboards I was looking at were going, okay, if you get one and it has an old BIOS, you're going to need a different chip, a lower CPU to put in there to update the BIOS first. And then I have to buy 2 of them. I wanted to avoid that. So this one should just work standard right out of the box as it is. It should just be fine to go. It's MATX, is a micro. It's small. It's not my favorite that it's going to do that, but look, it's fine. It will work. I wanted the big one. I couldn't really afford the big one, but I went with MSI because I was most certainly not going to use an Asus again, since that's the one that's died on me. That one was out. Like I said, I was looking at Gigabyte, but this is what I wound up going with. Should be fine. Mostly the one thing, and I spent the most amount of time looking at a motherboard, and the reason for that is the I/O. I need to have a certain amount of plugs in order to plug in all the various adapters that I use, or not adapters, but readers, card readers. Like when you ingest your footage from all the cameras, I need to be able to pull off of multiple SSDs at once, or I've got a little dock that's got 4 different SD and mini SD card plugs. So that's 8. They all need to be plugged in. I use a camera when I'm recording and I'm sitting over there. So that needs a cable. I need a good amount of plugs to put into it. And that's why I wound up looking at that Gigabyte EATX board, which I didn't go with because it was the price. This was, I want to say, right around $200 or somewhere in the $200 range. And that one was like $350. So you cut that back, knock $150 right off there. And since I was doing that, I originally picked, I've got a Fantex case, which I couldn't put in here because I built the server back in 2022. When I built a server in a Fantex case, I went, ooh, I really like this. I definitely want to make more case. I want to build more in Fantex. I just like the user friendliness of it and the size and everything. It was, and I found one that wasn't super expensive. So I went with Fantex. And then when I was decking it out with unlimited money, apparently, I was also looking at like a $200 cooling system, an AIO, from Fantex as well, so I could match that. Since that wasn't going to happen, but I liked the Fantex case, I went with MSI. So I wound up going with MSI. So I have an MSI something Mag Core Liquid 360R V2. It's a AIO, water cooled. I wound up trying to figure out whether or not you could air cool this one, and the consensus was yes, but you don't really want to skimp too hard on it. So I did get an AIO, which should be fine. That's the only thing I'm really not 100% on. I assume it will be fine. We'll find out. I could be recording this and later down the road go, well, I made a mistake. I can't keep this thing cool enough because this is blazing fast and incredibly hot, and yet there really isn't any kind of hard numbers going, get this will be able to cool it. So we went with something that hopefully will. I knew I wanted the biggest possible radiator that would fit in the case, so I was looking at that. I like that Fantex one. I was also looking at a Gigabyte one when I was going to get a Gigabyte board, but then I figured I'll just match it. It'll be fine. Hopefully everything should work nice and neat and even. Oh, I've got an SSD that's going to go in it. There's nothing fancy there. It's a terabyte. I also have another terabyte that I use that I'll be putting in it, and a 1,000-watt power supply, because when I put it all together, it was what's in it currently. When I got it done with the much more powerful processor, putting it together, this is all on PCPartPicker.com, because that's a fantastic resource for anyone trying to build a computer. It specs it out and tells you where you're going to run into issues, like, is this CPU and this motherboard going to have a BIOS issue that you will need to update? It also calculates about how much you're going to need for your power supply and what's in it currently, because again, my original intention was just to upgrade and kind of take pieces parts out of the current one. There's an 850-watt power supply in it currently, and with what it's in there right now, perfectly fine, even with the 3090. But when I do to upgrade to this, then it gets a bit where it goes, it's going to require 858, and I don't want to peak it and just go ahead and upgrade to 1,000-watt power supply. And Gigabyte was the best deal that I could get on that. I also was looking at a Seasonic. Again, I'm not doing EVGA again, but I just got a Seasonic for the work computer. As I mentioned earlier, I went ahead and got a power supply RMA'd for EVGA because it kept shutting off my computer randomly while I'm in work meetings and on calls. It's not that it was drawing too much, because it has, yes, there's a fair amount of monitors. That's really not drawing all that much to output to those from the GPUs that are in there. It's got dual GPUs, but it's really not all that much. I was not pushing it over the limits by any means. The thing just started dying on me, and it's not like it was all that old either. It was under warranty. I sent it back. I had to pay to do that and get a new one. But during that process, I knew I wasn't going to, because I also wasn't 100% sure it was the power supply. That was my guess. I had tried everything else software related, but it just randomly there would be an audible click, which I wasn't 100% sure was the power supply, and then the computer would restart. And it also would freeze sometimes. I couldn't. I don't know. I thought maybe I've messed something up. Maybe I need to just reformat Windows. I did that. I cleaned everything up. I kept checking. Sometimes I'd get a blue screen, but it was like one time in 10. Other times I'd be like listening to music or on a call talking to someone, and it would start stuttering, like frozen stuff. I wouldn't even get a blue screen, and then the whole power supply, I'd hear a click and the whole thing would reset, which again, when you're in the middle of a meeting with like 15 other people, not ideal for you to just drop and come back and go, yeah, there's something with my computer. I thought I figured it out, but I didn't. But I'll tell you, I switched to a Seasonic power supply and everything cleared up immediately. Haven't had a single issue since. So that tells me it was, because my next guess was, well, if that's the case, okay, this isn't really related to any of this stuff, but just in general, I was running 3 graphics cards out of it to have 10 monitors. That was excessive. I didn't need it. I just wanted to see if I could, because I have I buy really cheap monitors secondhand, like really cheap monitors. I've got a monitor over here for when I'm like sitting and playing computer games and recording them. This was $15 completely, like full sold, shipped and everything. Anyway, that's been the cheapest one I've gotten. Usually I get them for like $20-$30. They're just old. They'll last as long as they last, and it's going to be fine. But I'm putting life into it, and it still works. Anyway, I was running 10. That was unnecessary. And the only way that I could get that was through like a little extension cable that comes out of a PCI slot that's not really meant to power that much, and then plugged into a card that doesn't require additional power connectors. That's not ideal. I assumed that was the problem because I was trying to be cheeky and see if I could get away with it to have 10 monitors, because I really just wanted to put text on some of them so I could have like additional vertical monitors and have work chat and personal chat and whatever I need for while I'm working. It's not necessary. And that was my first thing that I pulled out when I started seeing repeatedly power reset while working. But that wasn't the issue. And resetting the RAM wasn't the issue, and the CPU. But maybe the CPU's gone bad. Maybe it's the motherboard itself. I don't know. But the next cheapest thing and the next thing I know I've already had one power supply die in that work computer, as a matter of fact, back a couple years ago at this point. So yeah, that one was an EVGA as well. And now this one is a different EVGA. It wasn't the same one. I made sure that it wasn't, because that would be my expectation. And that's what I thought it was the fact that I had returned one, and when you get your return back, it's a refurbished unit. It's not brand new. Something's already failed on it once, which means that it most likely it's the most likely culprit that it was going to fail again. But that actually was that power supply is in another computer. It's completely unrelated. Just happens to be another EVGA. So that's unfortunate that it's happened. I won't be getting EVGA again, but that really has no purpose on what we're talking about here. I've replaced it with a Seasonic, and I would have gotten another one, but it was more expensive, and I thought, well, Gigabyte's fine. This is what's going to go into there. I don't really have the room or space or setup or anything. So on Patreon, I'm going to build a whole computer. I'm waiting for the RAM to come in. That may be the one thing that you're noticing I don't have. It's Kingston DDR5, another 128 gigs, because to get 192, which is the most that this motherboard can support, was considerably more. That was the cheapest option. It's white, which doesn't really go with anything. At one point I went, okay, I'm going to mix black and white parts to see. That was the cheapest option, was to get that. It's got RGB on it. It's going to be fine. I'm not worried about what this one looks like. I'm going to make the gaming one look nice, and it's going to go out into living room kind of area with a whole setup that I'm going to work on. Maybe I'll show you things here at the end of the video. You'll be seeing the completed cases. The black case is the editing computer, and the white case will be my gaming computer going forward. But anyway, the RAM isn't here yet. Oh, it's 5200. It's DDR5, so it's a significant upgrade, and it's much faster. I'm excited about that. I've been wanting to upgrade to something like that for some time now. It's not here yet. It's out for delivery as of today. I was hoping it would show up while I was recording, to be honest with you, and it didn't. But FedEx says it should be sometime in the next hour and a half. So as soon as that gets here, I'm going to go set up in a different space because there's not really enough room here, and I'm going to record a whole real long video as I build a computer and put it up on Patreon. So that's the plan. I'm actually going to build two, but one of them is mostly built. I just got to grab a couple of things out of it, redo the cables on it because it's gotten kind of messy. I've had to replace a fan on it. I did that before. When I did the video back in 2023, I may have talked about it, that I wanted it to look like Canon's white lenses because it was mostly designed off of that. So it had a lot of white to it. And then I got a specific white fan to put right on the front of the CPU that had a red ring around it of RGB, like a red ring of Canon's white lenses. That was cool to me. And that fan died a couple of months ago. Just won't work anymore. It was cheap. It was an off-brand. I can't say I didn't see it coming, but when that happened, and I also updated the whole RGB as it was because I was playing around with it, I need to the cables are a mess. So I guess I'm glad that I don't actually have it sitting here. Not only did I not go unplug it and bring it out, but yeah, I'm going to do those things. And yeah, I'm going to enjoy it because I haven't gotten to build a computer in some time. That's not true. I just built one recently out of like $40 parts. To play computer games on separately because I needed something. I had really old ones that died, and I'm just rambling now, but I bought a used motherboard off of eBay for $40, and I bought a case for $40 and a power supply for $40 because I'm just running computer games from the early 2000s so far, and I wanted a dedicated machine to be able to do that on because it was worth it to spend $120 so I don't have to be playing off the editing computer, which is what I was doing. I would set up, I'd record stuff, I'd get things edited, and while it was rendering, I'd go, well, I really can't go start playing games on it right now. They are not going to go work well. And then I'm unplugging and plugging monitors in order to run things around to the setup. It's better to just have it dedicated. And then when we move at one point out of this apartment, I'll have things split off into different areas, and they won't all be in one room, so it will be more convenient to have it. But I did that a month or two ago. Technically, I have built a computer, and in the last year and a half, because I did it a few months ago. But now I'm going to do that today. I'm excited. I'm ready to build. I like doing this. It's going to be fun. I've got all my components. As soon as that RAM gets here, I didn't think of a good way to end it. I think I've gone over everything in my notes about why I'm doing this. I hope the AMD stuff works out. I did look. That would be the last thing. Once I had it in hand and I was looking at it, and I was looking at the white case with the white aspects that I've put into it and the white cables and a mostly white computer and a black GPU, the 3090 that's in it right now, and I got this and I went, well, I could return it still. It's unopened. Haven't done anything with it. I could return it. What would it take to get a white GPU? And again, NVIDIA is really expensive. So going with AMD, I'd have to make a pretty significant drop down. Instead of a 6700 XT, it would be like a 7600 something in white that would be slightly cheaper. But instead of 12 gigs of RAM, it would have 8. Nah. No, not worth it. No. I know it would look cool, but it would not be worth it to drop down that much. I already am wondering if I'm going to be able to play at the frame rates that the monitor, I think the refresh rate on the monitor is 170 hertz. It's the highest I've ever, everything I've got over there is like 60. I'm really excited to be able to play at high frame rates because that's what I prefer anyway. Cool. That's it. That's the whole video. Thanks for watching. This has been the update about this stuff. You'll see footage throughout at the end. I don't know. I'll edit it on this computer when it's built of what the end product looks like. Unless I cut in now with problems that I ran into along the way and was unable to make this work. Bye, everybody. And now for a segment to go in the main video. I forgot to mention something extremely important that I set up for my server, and I just kind of played it fast and loose with the editing/gaming, which will now just be editing, and it will be on a very nice, expensive UPS. Got to have a backup battery, got to have a proper surge protector, putting a lot of money into this thing, don't want anything to happen to it. So I bought that. It's in a box. It's not really something I can show you yet. You'll see it in the end result too. But it's very important that I mention that there.